Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Interview With, the podcast where we have real conversations with people shaping the e commerce world. From founders, marketers, developers, operators, we go beyond the buzzwords to hear the honest stories behind the brands, the platforms, and ideas, most importantly, that are driving the digital commerce industry forward. Whether you're here to learn, get inspired, or just eavesdrop on some smart people talking shop, you're in the right place. Let's dive right in. This week we have Joe Fox, president of Growave. How you doing, Joe?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me, Nihar. I'm super excited. I always love our conversations.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, Roswell is a very strong partner of Growave, and we're excited to continue to build that partnership. But here today, we want to talk a little bit about you and your journey in e-commerce. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Joe, so for the very few listeners that are out there that may not know you.
Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction and absolutely value the partnership that we have with Roswell and, of course, Nihar, our friendship. So thank you so much for having me. Little bit about me. I actually started agency side. So back in 2013, I formed an agency in Australia, as you can tell from the accent, and it was called Studio Culture. And I founded that with a business partner who was very, very focused on design development. This was a little bit before Shopify had kind of reached its mainstream and its maturity. So a lot of the builds that we did were on WooCommerce, and then we were early days of SEO, and then we also ran AdWords and all of those sorts of things. And I really grew that business from just my business partner and I to an agency that was doing about 2.8 to 3 million over a 6 year period. We built that. We had 12 staff at the time that I exited. And then I exited that and moved more into the technology side of e-commerce and digital and web development and design. And I actually headed up the APAC region for a Scandinavian company that were utilizing AI to do digital transformation, business intelligence, and inform digital advertising campaigns. And we work with some really cool brands there, like Toyota, Blackmores, which is a really big brand in Australia and Asia Pacific that focuses on vitamins, supplements, wellness, etc. Publicly listed company. And then I moved to work at a company called Fast, which was, I think, one of the first unicorns to die from lack of funding. I think everyone probably, or a lot of the veterans in the industry watching, will remember the fast hoodies and all of that. So I had a bit of a baptism by fire into the SaaS landscape. Worked really hard while I was there, and happy to say that APAC was the most successful region, even more successful than the US whilst I was there. And whilst I started in partnerships and building some really strategic relationships, I actually kind of moved more into the management side of things. And then, unfortunately, the company kind of imploded to a degree. Then, fast forward, I moved into the reviews and loyalty space at one of our now competitors, but I like to say a friendly competitor because we all know each other in this space. And then, most recently, I've been at Growwave for the past 18 months. Started out as partnerships sort of manager, building out a partnerships program from scratch. And then that has very much shifted, like some of my previous roles, where I've now stepped in to a more senior level role, and now I'm president at Growwave and responsible for all of our growth, essentially within the US, working very closely with our CEO, Eldar, who you've met to really get Growwave to the masses. So, been a very exciting journey so far.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a great conversation with Eldar. Shout out to Eldar. I saw him over at the Shopify Editions conference in Toronto, and he had nothing but great things to say about you. I was shocked, but just kidding. All jokes aside, congratulations on the promotion to president. Well deserved. So, why e-commerce though? What attracted you initially about that? Because I mean, to be honest, like I'm an accidental e-commerce agency owner. I didn't intend on this to happen, but I think I made the right choice. But I'd love to hear from you. How did you actually decide to go into this wild, wacky world of e-com?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you certainly made the right choice because I think, you're incredible at what you do and you're so knowledgeable and all of that is transferred across to Roswell, which is amazing and shows to the strengths of what you're doing in the market. So let me firstly say that. But I think I was accidental too, Nihar. I was in a relationship at the time. My partner at that time was the founder of a really large women's fashion boutique
Okay.
in Australia. And that was prior to a lot of these really big, fashion boutiques that have since gone online since. And we were one of the first. And so I was working in the construction industry, had my own business in that space, and ended up moving into ecom purely because it fascinated me and I've always loved advertising. And so for me, it was more about the marketing, how to sell in that space. Even though I was in construction, I'd always worked in sales and I kind of pivoted into this, relatively fresh and new space and learnt everything that there was. That was my sponge time in life. Everything that I could soak up and learn. It was like all the resources that HubSpot were putting out. We were on Big Commerce, early days of Big Commerce too, which was founded out of Australia. And I really just loved that space. Yeah. And then, so that was brand side. And then I met my business partner at one of the Google conventions that they used to put on for agencies to teach more about their products, like analytics, Google Ads. I know that's all changed names now, but so I was absolutely fascinated by it, and I've always gravitated to building relationships, and I believe that your network is your net worth, and so I really love building relationships with people, and that translated really well into the agency space. And what I also am a big believer of knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, and my business partner was the same, and his weakness was selling and retaining customers, and my weakness was if you threw me into a dev environment, I would have zero idea what I'm looking at, and so but my strength very much is sales and relationships and thinking of things strategically. And that's what allowed us to build and ultimately scale that business.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you. My business partner, best friend since I was 8 years old, Hugh Lim, is the CEO, founder of Roswell. He is a developer's developer, an engineer's engineer. Sees things in ones and zeros. I like to call him Neo from the Matrix sometimes. How it operates. And but you throw me into that, I can kind of see my way around. But what would take me, probably a week and a half to develop or figure out would take, him probably 15 minutes, and so it's a yin and yang situation. I totally understand, and my strengths are very aligned with yours in terms of sales, business development, marketing, operations, finance, all of that. But I think that it's important, just like you said, to have both sides of the coin in order to be able to make it work. You know.
Absolutely. And I know that you and I have discussed this offline in the past. It's like if you want to, go quickly and lonely, you have to do it yourself. But if you want to go quickly and further, you really need to do it in a form of a partnership of one way or the other. And, to that point, it sounds like we had a very similar journey on that front.
100%. And question for you, because you've spent so much time over in APAC. What is the e-commerce landscape like out there? Is it the same as you would see in the U.S. and in North America? And because I feel like you're a global citizen. Why don't you talk a little bit about how the e-commerce landscape differs from APAC to Europe to EMEA to North America and LATAM and so on and so forth? Because I know that's probably a pretty important initiative for Growave and something that you need to really grasp and embrace.
Absolutely. I think, look, the culture of relationships is very translatable across all of the regions, the aforementioned regions. I think Australia is probably, in my personal opinion, slightly more referral and relationship based than the US is. Whilst I think partnerships is still incredibly important here, I do believe in the US, and I almost feel like, the US, having lived here for quite some time now, having always done business here, I do think different regions of the US can almost have their own different culture of doing business and how ecom and the networking and deals are done. So I think Australia typically doesn't necessarily have that. Whilst you have a very big land mass in Australia, you have a very small population. So, in our industry, everyone knows everyone very much in the US, I feel. But there might be a few people that you may not be super close with. Whereas I feel in APAC and particularly in Australia, everyone knows everyone. So it is very, very, very much based on word of mouth, referrals, relationships, even more so than what the US ecom environment is like. I think in UK EMEA, once again, kind of dependent on region. I think interesting regions like Germany, the Nordics, they are very different in the way that the
Totally.
UK kind of does business. So there are little nuances in each, but I think, to the point of what, yourself and I are really focused on, which is the relationships, the business development, the marketing, all of that is translatable. And whilst you may have to make small tweaks to your strategies for each region, if you can still build amazing relationships, add a lot of value and not be, you and I have discussed this too, where it's like partnerships isn't what can you give me? Call up an agency every 6 months and say, what leads have you got? It takes time. You have to build trust. You have to build relationships. And all of those relationships don't matter if the product and service behind it are not up to par and they're not a cut above the rest. So to answer that question, I guess in a TLDR format, each region is different, but the importance of relationships resonates throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting. I didn't know. I think we had talked about it once. I didn't realize that you'd started your own agency. Why did you leave the dark side to come to the light side and go to the tech platform? I mean, I say the dark side because agency life is, as you know.
I still feel like I am in the trenches of agency, where, being a startup, working very closely with cool agency partners such as yourself. The main catalyst for it, honestly, and I love my ex-business partner. We're still very close, not as close as you and Hugh, but, we still talk regularly and everything like that. The agency that we started is still going. And essentially, we were going in a direction of, we were nominated for all of these big awards. We were going down this direction of huge revenue, and we kind of hit a crossroads of where we wanted to go. I wanted to essentially be acquired and be a part of something much larger, scale internationally. International business has always fascinated me. And my business partner was very much comfortable with building a asset that would essentially be a long-term passive income and passive asset where he could still be incredibly creative and be like a little bit like Neo from the Matrix. So that's kind of where we essentially came to a very, very solid and fair arrangement for me to be bought out of the business, or as opposed to go through with the acquisition we had on the table from a much larger organization to be acquired from.
I appreciate that answer. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and gives a lot of guidance to those that are maybe in the same position and are trying to understand and navigate their career in the e-commerce industry. Speaking of which, what are the trends that you're seeing evolve and really push the boundaries of the horizons of what the e-commerce industry is?
Definitely. So, I mean, I don't want to be the guy who jumps on a podcast and talks about AI, but AI,
Right.
AI is a huge component. I mean, we are all seeing this. I'm sure that, I know how well over at Roswell you're implementing that into your services. It's an extension of what you do, and everyone's talking about agents are going to rule the world. We've seen this Shopify integration with ChatGPT. Look, I have known, and having worked for a Scandinavian company after selling my agency that, was purely focused on machine learning or, large language models or very, very, very early AI. This is back in, when are we talking about? 2018. So I've kind of, been aware of what it can do, what its capabilities are, and the fact that it was on the horizon. And the CEO and founder of that company was a very close mentor of mine, and I very much was impartial to his vision. And anyone who knows anything about the Nordics and Scandinavia is that there's a very, you have to look at things like IKEA to understand the futuristic vision that these companies have, and a lot of the founders of the tech companies that particularly come out of Scandinavia have. So I've been aware of where that's going. I think that's going in a whole different direction, and it's something that I think is incredibly important, but it's only an extension of everything that's already happening. It's a speed boost, it's a level up in a video game that takes you to the next level of what you're doing. I think the fundamentals are still so important, like your CX, the way that you communicate, the automation of your flows, the data collection that you're making to make decisions. All of that stuff is still table stakes. But what I am seeing, and one of the things that really excited me about Growave, is this unification sort of process that's happening on a tech stack consolidation front. I think a lot of brands are realizing the power of really making sure that their CDP is very centralized, focused. The data in there is super accurate, and any tools that plug into that really need to be talking to each other and operating in unification. Then the other side of that unification piece is what Shopify is obviously, really heavily focused on their sort of unified commerce piece, which is connecting what I've always referred to as omni-channel. So really making sure that bricks and mortar is connected to online in a seamless fashion. And what we've really focused on doing at Growave is aligning with those core principles. So the consolidation of tech stack and the unification there, and the unification of things that Shopify are doing with Shopify POS. So those are kind of the three topical things that I think are most crucial and important, looking at it from a SaaS lens, or from the lens that I'm looking at in my position. But I think, to your point, from an agency perspective, it's really what you are doing at Roswell, where you're taking all of these concepts and servicing merchants with them, utilizing the power of the SaaS that's available to you. And I
Yeah.
think it's everything's just got to be harmonious, and even more so at the moment.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the holistic approach to retention marketing, and I think Growwave really hits the nail on the head in all aspects of it. So I exercise for you. You're in a subway car in New York City, and you happen to sit down next to the senior VP of e-commerce for a dream brand, and you have that moment until the next stop. What's your pitch to Growwave, and if you have to do it in 30 seconds or less, how would you communicate that?
So I find this with a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are either really focused on conceptualization, or a lot of people that are really focused on metrics. My first kind of thing that I would do is find out which way they lean, and then I would alter the pitch to that direction. If I'm talking to someone who's really focused on numbers, then I'm talking about how important it is more than ever to focus on lifetime customer value, because CAC is going through the roof. And then if they're more focused on conceptualization, then I'm talking about the unification piece and being able to have all of their data living in the CDP, which is powering all of their activities, which is driving the aforementioned metrics that are important to them.
Very well said. You mentioned a good point. CACs are through the roof. I mean, it's out of control. I mean, if I have to give another dollar to Zuck or Larry, or Sergey, you know what I mean? Like, it's
I hear you.
unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
so. Are you seeing brands really embrace retention marketing like they should, or are they still tiptoeing around it?
This is an interesting conversation, and I'm glad we're having it, right? I am still seeing major brands who have traditionally been very clunky and very slow to move, who are not utilizing experts such as yourselves to help them navigate through these times of high customer acquisition costs, and they are focusing and relying far too much on big budgets that are beginning to dissipate by the day. So that is problem number one I see. Problem number two I see brands who do the inverse. So they rely purely on focusing on loyalty, retention, everything like that, but they're not feeding any of the top of the funnel. And I think the third thing that I'm seeing that's not a problem is when brands who are very serious about their growth and where they want to head and the direction that they're doing are working with, partners such as yourselves who understand what the full picture should look like in a harmonious environment. And those are the ones who are winning because they're focusing on doing top of the funnel correctly, relying a little bit less on paid spend and doing cool things like LLM optimization, really focusing on keeping very clean lists and really focusing on that life cycle piece. And then they're focusing on having a loyalty and retention piece in there from the beginning instead of trying to plug it in at the end when the dam is crumbling down on them and they're sticking their fingers in all the holes. That's when a lot of the time brands unfortunately start to think about loyalty and all of the components and customer experience, which they should have been working with experts like yourselves from the start to look at everything holistically. So that's where I see it. It's still not unified. Everyone's singing from a different song sheet. Everyone's trying different things. There needs to be this reckoning moment in e-commerce where people, and it's particularly big brands, understand that you do not have the skill sets, the agility, and the whole picture like you would working with experts.
Yeah, great. Well said. So that kind of leads into my next question. What are the common misconceptions from your standpoint about working in e-commerce, from whether it's at an agency, whether it's at a brand, a tech platform? For all the listeners out there, I'm sure that are potentially eyeing a career in the e-commerce industry. What do you want to say to them?
I think one of the biggest things, and I'm sure that you get this a lot, my friend, is everyone thinks it's all flashy and glamorous, and oh, you must get all these free products from brands, and all you ever do is spend your time networking at events, and how much business really gets done from that. Those are the kind of misconceptions. I think whether you're working in a startup environment on the SaaS side, whether you're working on the agency side, you have to love it. You have to love the grind because it is a grind. It is a marathon and you're sprinting during the marathon on either side of it. And
All
sure, we all
2 miles, you're sprinting.
absolutely. And I think it's like yes, there are some like we're so lucky in the fact that the upside of that is that once you have been in this industry for some time, you've developed incredible relationships, you have a genuine group of friends that would go out of their way to help you in any situation. And I don't know anyone who else who has that. Like, I know that if I called you in the middle of the night and I needed assistance with something, you would jump out of bed and do your best to do it.
Do it.
Yeah. And I love that. And I don't think any other industry has that like we do.
No, you're so right. I mean, the relationships that I made with you and at all the conferences we go to, and you're right. And prior to the other question about the misconception of working in e-commerce, it's all fun and games. It's anything but it is a grind. It is an entire sprint of a marathon. And you said your network is your net worth. I couldn't agree more. But you start to develop relationships that almost become family in this industry. I look forward to going to some of these events. And it goes beyond. I know, you've told me about your family and about the direction you're taking it in, and your life in Australia and how you came out to LA and now you're in Austin, and vice versa with my wife being in the UK and her journey and my journey through music, and all of that is what really rings true in terms of it's not just transactional. It's a relationship that stands the test of time. And when you go to these events and you have to spend 14 hours a day networking and being on, the silver lining is you get to spend time with people like you. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that for sure.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I'm very honored by that because I think it's a beautiful friendship and it transcends business. And what more could you want in life than having something where you're surrounded by amazing people, like realistically?
Yeah.
And that's what I think makes it all worth it. So thank you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, people like doing business with people they like, and have relationships with because you want to see your friends and family succeed. And so that's something that works, but it's a sense of integrity and a sense of actuality of truth of what the relationship is because there's no you can't bullshit your way through this industry. You're gonna get
Absolutely.
and I've seen it happen. You're gonna get caught. You're gonna get put on Front Street, and people are gonna realize you really aren't who you say you are, and that's when it's time to pack up and go home. Looking,
Absolutely.
looking back at your career though in e-commerce, what are you most proud of achieving, Joe?
Yeah, so I it's in that's a very very good deep poignant question. I like that in the fact that I can't pinpoint it to one thing because through various transitions of my career, there's been a lot of things, and some of the things are metrics and increasing partner referred revenue and things like that that have been things that I've individually been very proud of. But if I look at things in a holistic perspective, it comes back to the relationships that we were just talking about. I think the fact that and I know you're the same, being able to, very easily help people get new jobs in our industry. That's something I absolutely love doing. I've never taken a dollar to be able to do that. I really like being able to refer business and connect really cool merchants with really cool partners such as yourselves. I love that. That makes me happier than any ARR figure, even though that's my main focus on a day to day. So the relationships, helping people in their careers, whether it be those job introductions or helping see people who may be a little bit sheltered in their approach to things come out of their shell as they begin to have success in their career when you're managing them on a team front. That's amazing. And most recently, one thing that am incredibly proud of is um, Eldar has built an absolutely incredible business and everyone surrounding him from Central Asia, from a very, non-common place that a lot of people even know where it is and couldn't point to on a map. To be
Exactly.
able to help him actualize and bring to life, which includes team members, metrics, all of the awareness, all of those sorts of things, and help someone and a founder cash in on that vision and really help bring that to life. That's an incredibly rewarding experience. And be able to do that with some of my best friends in the world. I mean, what more could you want?
Yeah, well said. Well said. I agree. I mean, I'm the out of the 50 people at Roswell, the what keeps me up at night is the 49 people that I got to be responsible for payroll, for health benefits, for their mortgages, for their kids, and so on and so forth. Not that I'm personally responsible, but the point being is that Roswell gives them that opportunity, and that's what I find most enjoyable too. So well said, Joe.
And I just want to quickly add to that because I've seen the progression of a lot of your team members and the staff and the culture that you are responsible for building over there very much. And prior to this, being able to catch up with Maya and hear about her holiday in Italy and how, like that stuff is super meaningful and you're harvesting that and you are responsible for that. So I love that that's your driving purpose and factor. So I just want to compliment you on that because not everyone has that culture,
Thank you.
and it's something you should be incredibly proud of.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, profit isn't the only motive. It's also the pursuit of happiness, which is important to me and my team. Joe, let's wrap this up. But tell the listeners out there how they can reach out to you over at Growave. What's the best way to partner with you, whether you're an agency, whether you're a brand, or you're a tech platform looking to integrate with Growave. Take them home.
Absolutely. So look, LinkedIn is definitely the best place to reach me. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes and the link. The other thing that I want to quickly give light to is our podcast episode that's coming out with you and I. I love that we can
Sure.
dive into and have these conversations. So we'll make sure that that's all linked through on YouTube, but it's Retain, Grow, Thrive on YouTube under the Growwave channel. And feel free to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. As Nihar and I have both pointed out, we love relationships and we love networking. So please feel free to drop me a line. And Nihar, thank you and Roswell so much for having me on board and for being great partners, great friends, having me on this podcast. I love seeing the amazing success you have, like the Webby Awards.
Oh, thanks.
It's awesome to me personally. That makes me very happy. So keep winning, my friend, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, rising tides lift all boats. We'll do this together. Joe, thank you for coming on the show, and we're going to have you on again in the future. And look forward to seeing you again at a conference soon, or just hanging out in Austin or New York. Let's do it.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much.
See you soon.